From the high spring pastures of Derbyshire, where the streams sparkle like quicksilver, a torrent of sheep flows down the mountainsides, laden with winter's wool. Sheep herders and their tireless working dogs are gathering their sheep back into the folds. Sheep farming in the high dales of Derbyshire and Yorkshire is work as harsh as the surroundings. David Tyson and his son Stephen are culling the ewes and lambs. Some are to be sold. Others must be vaccinated. Each must be shorn of its wool. Never romanticize about sheep farming. It is a labor long and arduous. Yet it is passed from generation to generation as if it were life's greatest treasure. There is a rhythm to it all, as regular as the seasons, as steady as the centuries. This is the high country, the Peak District, they call it. Some of England's wildest and most beautiful scenery is shared here by the counties of Cheshire, Staffordshire, and Derbyshire. Roadsides are lined with rhododendron in the late hours of June, the first days of glorious summer. Dams wedge the steep clefts of the limestone ridges and collect water to quench the thirst of populations and factories that cohabitate the industrial cities of the Midlands. Such lakes harbor opportunities for recreation and relaxation. Be awake to these valleys softened by woodland and by water. To the high dales that tower all around, and to the towns sheltered in the valleys that blend with the winds that blow in the peaks. Chatsworth House is called the Palace of the Peaks. The magnificent mansion stands in a superb park on the River Derwent, feeding ground for a very determined duck. Chatsworth is home for the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire. The estate grounds encompass pasture lands where fine herds and flocks can roam, and we can gaze upon the quiet and beauty of evening in this enchanting place. Dalton is the English pottery crowned royal. The Flower Seller's Children is a classic Royal Dalton bone china on glaze figurine. First issued in 1929, bone china, consisting of china clay, Cornish stone, and bone ash, is molded into the key elements of the figurine and then carefully assembled by Stephen Barker. John Dalton entered the English ceramic industry in 1815 with a sizable investment of £100. Henry Dalton, his son, pioneered the use of stoneware drain pipes to herald the dawn of modern sanitation and secured the company a fortune. Then the Daltons turned their attention to decorative wares. The Flower Seller's Children is one of the originals of the Royal Dalton figurines collection. Tiny clay roses to adorn the flower basket are the handicraft of Ruth Ford. Each tiny petal is shaped by hand and then fashioned into a flower. The figurine will then be first fired or biscuit fired to fuse the assembled parts together, glazed and fired again. What we might call painting is actually the application of ceramic coloring pigments applied to the gloss surface by artists to achieve the delicate harmony of color and tones so characteristic of Royal Dalton. The county of Dorset lies in the southwest of England. Her villages ring with names like Puddleton, Sturminster Newton, Percecaudle, and Piddle Trentide. That's easy for them to say. Blackmoor Vale cradles Shaftesbury. Gold Hill, Shaftesbury's most picturesque street, plunges down the hill with graceful abandon. So would all who walk here, but for the skills and dedication of Peter Smedley, who keeps Gold Hill's cobblestones in place. In County Hampshire, soft downland slopes enfold timeless villages with charming names: King's Somborne, Mottisfont, and Lower Woodford. But when your thatched roof starts to look like a weed patch, it's time to call the Thatchers. The village is Middle Wallop. Lionel Hewlett is the master thatcher here. The Hewletts have been thatchers for 6 generations. The durable straw employed here is wheat reed, 9 inches thick. Its beauty, resilience, and durability are legend. Hazelwood sticks are used for bindings. It requires 3 weeks of patient effort to thatch a cottage. It's well worth the effort, though. The thatch will last for 18 to 20 years. If young Michael Hewlett stays with the trade, he'll be the 7th generation to help keep the lid on and help keep the rain out of the charming cottages of County Hampshire. Rising mysteriously from the Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge is the most famous of all megalithic monuments. Dating from the Stone Age, it taunts our imaginations with theories of sun-worshipping rites and primitive astronomical computers. Lifting majestically from the plains of Wiltshire is Salisbury's mighty cathedral. Begun in the 13th century, Salisbury is the ultimate refinement of the early English styles of architecture. With its grace, its character, and its majestic 404-foot spire, it seems to soar from the ground. For 800 years, it has pointed the way. Beaulieu is the stately manor home of Lord and Lady Montague. In 1908, the Montagues purchased a Rolls-Royce, the grandest car of its day, a silver ghost. 75 years later, the same automobile is still part of the Montague family fleet. Henry Royce, one of the builders of the car, visited here in 1910. After a tour of the estate, he asked Lord Montague what he thought of the car. "Magnificent," came the reply. "The loudest thing about it is the ticking of the clock." Henry Royce was dutifully impressed at the compliment paid his car, but vowed upon return to his factory to do something about the clock. The Beaulieu estate is a working farm noted for the magnificent horses it breeds and the fine dairy herds it has evolved. Gardeners translate the estate premises into the colorful language of flowers and shrubs. The titled estates of England are part and parcel of the tradition of landed aristocracy. They harbor much of the rich social traditions of the realm. The estate libraries are a rich mixture of rare books and the environment to enjoy them. Saloon seems too common a name for some of the most beautiful rooms in England, but that's what the English call them. Dinner with a few close friends may well bring together the lords and ladies of the land. England's nobility have weathered the centuries in style and still rest securely on their aristocratic foundations. It's one of the nice little places to come home to, this home of the Montague Arms. The wind-ravaged mass of Dartmoor protrudes from the county of Devon. This stern land, clad in heather and bracken, is gentled by the sheep. And when it's feeding time, I've never figured out exactly what running your tail like a propeller has to do with it, but it must be important. Beneath the desolate summits of the high moor is a gentler country where sheep farms abound, sheep and their wool being one of the traditional focuses of Devonshire life. From England's fine dairy cows comes rich milk in abundance. Southwestern England, in the neighborhood of the Cheddar Gorge, is world famous for the cheese that bears the Cheddar name. For hundreds of years, farm wives have transformed milk to cheese as a way of storing its goodness. Warm milk is soured, and then rennet is added to coagulate or curdle it, separating the curds into a rubbery mass which is worked and cut to permit gases to escape. Then the cheese is chopped, salted, and packed, preparatory to aging in natural rind. Cheddar, properly made and properly aged, is a true cheese lover's cheese. Standing on the brink of the Goonhilly Downs of Cornwall, we can begin to appreciate this land's special relationship with the sea. We've come to Lizard Point, the southernmost tip of a lovely peninsula that has become famous for its outstanding natural beauty. This is also the southernmost tip of England, so England's southernmost house stands here, taking in the southern view. This area of the island enjoys a mild climate year-round. Many plants and flowers unknown to the rest of England grow here. Even palm trees bask in the English sunshine here at Lizard Point. Standing at Kynance Cove and peering into the sea is like looking into the clear seeing eye of the earth. Pillars, stacks, and pyramids of the variegated mineral serpentine rise from a firm bed of sand. Sea, rocks, sand, and sky combine to create a spectacular seascape at Kynance Cove. Pathways lead us down from the high ground to the accompanying roar of the surf. Long, foam-capped rollers crash onto ideal surfing beaches between the craggy headlands and promontories of Cornwall's Atlantic coast. Ruined engine houses are forceful reminders of the men who once struggled to extract precious mineral ores from primitive mines deep beneath the rural landscape of Cornwall. High above the Atlantic on jagged, broken cliffs is a romantically ruined castle, Tintagel, the birthplace of King Arthur. It would be hard to imagine a grander setting for such a king and his knights in shining armor. Here were Guinevere, the courtly Lancelot, and the magical Merlin. There are those who doubt the legend, but we need our Robin Hoods and our King Arthurs. For many of us, saying that King Arthur never passed through this portal need not tarnish the romantic illusion that he did. If I could take you to only one fishing village in all of England, I would want to bring you here, to Polperro. We'd have to search in every harbor and every bay and every little cove in the whole of England to find another village as handsomely mellowed as this one seems to be. Here the rhythms of life ebb and flow in harmony with the tides. The tide is out, the boats are in, and all's right with the world. Our cat has found a ringside seat for the evening water ballet. Gulls have settled into the stream of things to bathe and to gargle. It's enough to make your mouth water. A tiny stream flows like quicksilver down through the town. Evening has come to Polperro, an old and welcome friend. Storm-tumbled cliffs protect Polperro from the sea. Sunlight splashes upon the rocks in harmony with the waves. Soon, the light will reach the shelter of Polperro. Soon the tide will knock upon her door. Ask her boats to come out to play. Polperro is coming to life. Superman dashes through the village looking for heroines to save. And what would morning be without the tinkle of milk bottles delivered to your door or fetched from the nearest store? Gradually, the tide is creeping in upon the harbor, nudging the boats to awaken, bearing reminders of the challenges that await the fishermen who will answer the call, promising only to be faithful in her cycles, to rise and fall like the breathing of a giant that lies close by the weathered side of Polperro. The storm-tumbled cliffs of Cornwall end at Land's End, the southwesternmost point of mainland England. Haunted by gulls and mermaid legends, these cliffs are locked forever, arm in arm with the sea in that special bond of affection that gives every island its charm. An 11th century castle dominates St. Michael's Mount, close by Penzance. It is from Penzance, the famous pirates' port, that we are off on a flight to the Isles of Scilly. British Airways operates a regularly scheduled helicopter service year-round from Penzance to St. Mary's, the capital of the Scilly Isles. Far more than a major visitor attraction, this helicopter service is by far the swiftest and most convenient method of passage between the islands and the mainland for the residents who live in the Isles. The helicopters are ultra-modern, state-of-the-art Sikorskis, carrying 22 passengers on the 25-minute hop to St. Mary's. We witness the dramatic end of mainland England at Land's End. Yet after a brief passage beneath the sea, the land protrudes once again briefly to form the chain of islands called the Scillies. We're nearly there. St. Mary's is in view. Welcome. We're landing on St. Mary's, the largest of the Scilly Isles, and yet St. Mary's is only 2 miles long by 3 miles long. Star Castle, built in 1593 in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, dominates Hughtown, the largest settlement in the Scillies. The remarkably warm climate nurtures a profusion of tropical and semi-tropical flowers, plants, and shrubs. "10 miles of roads and twice as many trails offer you pleasant access to St. Mary's many charms. So rarely do you hear the rumble of traffic, it is easy to imagine yourself transported back in time. Horses, roused from the contentment of grazing, are curious about your sudden appearance. You know the old adage about the grass being greener on the other side of the fence? Well, it's true. The streets and houses of Hughtown are as relaxed and contented as the residents. Part of St. Mary's charm is indeed her small size and quaintness. Chalk cliffs tower above Freshwater Bay on the island of the Romans called Vectis. Later, the Saxons gave the island the name by which we know it today, the Isle of Wight. Shaped like a lozenge, the island is but 23 miles long and 13 miles wide. Lying just off the south coast of England near Portsmouth and Southampton, the island is England in miniature. White Cliff Bay leads us around to the Esplanade and beaches at Ventnor. Do you remember how much you enjoyed your first trip to the sea? Mind you, some kids forego the kids stuff in order to practice for the big time. The thatched cottages of Shanklin lend a gingerbread character to a village little changed since Tennyson, Keats, and Dickens tarried here. Wander down along Winkle Street in the village of Calburn, and time seems momentarily frozen in a gentler past. The Isle of Wight's sunny southern aspect justifies its nickname as the Madeira of England. Here at Barton Manor, excellent vineyards furnish the essence of the wines that bear its name and its honor far and wide. Does the morning come to God's Hill, or is God's Hill a gift of the morning? That question will be debated so long as yesteryear lives on here amidst the thatched and slate roofs lining the chalk ridges of God's Hill. To live here and not stroll arm in arm with the morning would be to miss the perfect joy of it all. Men have gone down to the sea or prepared others for it through all the history of the Isle of Wight. Jack Whitehead and Norman Gatches are the only two carvers of ship's figureheads extant in the world today. The project they are discussing is the creation of a 3-ton, 15-foot figurehead for the restoration of the HMS Warrior, the world's first ironclad battleship. A remarkable photograph of the original was snapped in 1898. "18 months of diligent work, carload of Canadian pine, and the talents of two dedicated men have produced a masterpiece in gleaming white and gilded gold." Variegated sand cliffs reflect a westering sun in Alum Bay on the west coast of the Isle of Wight. And a broken white chalk promontory called the Needles hails England's first greeting or last farewell to the ships that pass by here. Rail lines feed like arteries into 16 primary train stations in the heart of London. To Charing Cross, St. Pancras, Liverpool, Victoria, Paddington, and Waterloo Station, and nearly a dozen more, come morning's commuters. Here's intellectual fuel to fire the reactors of business and commerce. More than 2 million people daily enter and exit this great city to fulfill their working roles. London's famous double-decker buses flow through the streets like a crimson tide. Bankers, brokers, and insurance executives exit from tube stations in the district of London called the Bank. Here, the Bank of England and many of the world's largest insurance companies keep their fingers on the world's economic pulse. The rush hour is ended, and London is settling into another day and a most important event. Buckingham Palace was built in 1703 by the Duke of Buckingham. It was left to Queen Victoria to move the royal court here in 1837. Changing the guard takes place on the forecourt of Buckingham Palace every day of the year. Troops from the Brigade of Guards, the Queen's personal bodyguard, conduct the ceremony, which entails marching a new guard from either the Chelsea or Wellington barracks to relieve the old guard from their posts. It's a grand spectacle, but you won't be alone in your enjoyment of it. Up to 15,000 people from around the world attend the guards changing every day. She'll tell him all about it when they get home. School children learn in the shadow of greatness here, close by the Houses of Parliament, once the royal residence of the monarchs. Today, Big Ben is bandaged. The famous clock tower of Westminster is undergoing restorations, and yet when the work is complete, Big Ben will still be wound by hand. This tall statue keeps a careful eye on the proceedings from Parliament Square. Do you know that fellow yonder? The rumpled statesman, Churchill. St. Paul's Cathedral, sheer magnificence in stone, grew from the mind of Sir Christopher Wren and rose from the ashes of the Great Fire of London in 1666. Wren's tomb is here. His simple epitaph reads, "Reader, if you seek his monument, look about you." St. Paul's new neighbor is the Barbican. This impressive new development built along the old Roman wall is an ambitious scheme to promote the city as a residential area. It contains high-rise blocks of apartments, shops, offices, churches, and the London Museum. Welcome to Middlesex Street, affectionately known since the 17th century as Petticoat Lane. Today you can buy almost anything from a sprig of heather to jumping beans in this venerable Sunday market. Vendors begin to set their stalls at sunup, and by 9 a.m. the aisles run full with shoppers and with sunshine. Wares sparkle. Indeed, everything around here shines. Look, fella, if I see her, I'll let her know you're still here. She shouldn't be hard to find. A stroll in the market on Sunday morning. That's what life is all about in the neighborhoods of Houndsditch, down here in Petticoat Lane, Middlesex Street. St. James Park, down along the mall, is a green oasis of peace in the midst of the city's turmoil. St. James is a reminder of the countryside, a cultivated wilderness. Once a brooding, marshy waste, the place was transformed in the 16th century by King Henry VIII. Kindred to all of the interesting personalities which inhabit a city, John Martin stands for hours like a lonely crucifix, feeding the sparrows who worship his presence. St. James Park, Green Park, Regent's Park, Kensington Gardens, and a dozen more. Over in Hyde Park, near Marble Arch, we find ourselves in Speaker's Corner. Here, you can mount your soapbox or your milk crate and take off on oratorical flights to any subject or any cause dear to you. Just don't expect everyone to agree with you. An avowed socialist attempts to peddle the glories of socialism in the presence of three young American visitors who promptly take up the debate. Such freedoms as our right to free speech have roots here in England. Rights and roots require careful cultivation and frequent watering if they're to shade us from tyranny. It is to the Thames that London owes its existence. There was no permanent settlement here until the Romans built the first bridge across the Thames, at almost exactly the spot it is spanned today by Tower Bridge, this magnificent fairy tale of Victorian engineering erected in 1894. 900 years ago, William the Conqueror began construction of the Tower of London, an indomitable fortress designed to impress and dominate the population of London. The yeoman warders, or beefeaters, the guardians of the King's buffet, are your guides throughout your stay. The towering walls, clanging dungeons, and hallowed passages are crammed with nearly 1,000 years of spine-tingling history. Since 1841, Trafalgar Square has graced the heart of London, honoring the exploits of Lord Nelson. Children always keep the mighty lions well polished. Pigeons outnumber the people in Trafalgar Square. They perch on hands and heads and shoulders and are fed, photographed, and fussed over. Kids love to feed pigeons. But you don't have to be a kid, just young at heart. Just look at this old girl. Boy, she hasn't had this much fun in years. Let's face it, she's cute. She really is. Not now, pigeon, not now. Boy, some of these little heads are really slippery. Foreign visitors are anxious to experience British culture. There, now. Boy, the folks back home are never going to believe this. But Jonathan Smith is the true Pied Piper of the pigeon set. Every morning on his way to work for the last 20 years, he's stopped here in Trafalgar Square to share a few minutes and maybe a few morsels with the pigeons. It takes patience and perseverance, but it could make you mighty popular with the pigeons. Princess Diana, accompanied by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, leave Buckingham Palace headed for the celebration of the Queen's official birthday. Now the Queen rides forth to perpetuate a 200-year-old tradition with roots stretching back to medieval times. The occasion is Trooping the Color, an event honoring the Queen's birthday. Today is the Queen's official rather than real birthday, a day chosen in summer when the chances for good weather are at their best. The field is called Horse Guards Parade. It is the forecourt of Whitehall Palace. Trooping the Color is the most spectacular military display in the country. Princess Diana and the Queen Mother arrive to the accolades of the assembled guests. Queen Elizabeth arrives wearing the uniform of one of the regiments in which she is colonel-in-chief. Massed on the parade grounds are the Brigade of Guards and the Household Cavalry, filling the space with a dazzling display of color and precision. The Queen takes the salute of her troops as she rides now in review. A very proud mother, the Queen Mother helps her great-grandchildren to understand the proceedings on the forecourt below. It is an absolutely spectacular setting. The ceremonial foundations of this ceremony date to times when regimental colors were paraded or trooped in the presence of new recruits so that they could learn to recognize the colors on which they were to fight. With pride and honor, they troop the colors in the presence of Her Majesty. London would be an infinitely poorer place without the splendor and dignity endowed upon it by such royal pageants, and without the Queen, who is the focus of it all. Samuel Johnson said it, "When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life." London can be physically exhausting. She may make you tired, but never tired of it. Now, with evening, scores of familiar edifices raise their time-honored silhouettes in praise to the hour and the glory of it all. The Thames flows like liquid sunshine, brim full with the light and the legends that have bathed London over the centuries before spilling into this timeless stream. To the south of London lies such charming counties as Surrey and Sussex. Villages cling to the steep slopes of the downs. Churchyards chronicle the many generations who have lived here alongside the main routes. Roadside pubs afford us convenient lunch breaks. Pubs welcome every social class to pause and refresh in the course of a busy day. Farms just barely keep the towns at bay here in the heavily populated South. Gardening is a singularly popular enterprise here in England. Gardeners rely heavily on natural fertilizers to enrich their garden plots. Dairy farmers advertise this very important commodity ready-bagged. The alternative is to pick your own. As with all playgrounds for the wealthy, Brighton has its eccentricities. The most impressive of these is the Royal Pavilion, a magnificent Oriental-style palace built in 1787. Brighton developed as a result of the 18th century health fad for sea bathing, and she is still regarded as a popular seaside resort. The south coast of England is perched atop its towering chalk cliffs. At Rottingdean, wind and waves slowly shape and reshape the land at will. The annual South of England show brings together England's finest horses and horse lovers to vie for prestigious honors. Generations of breeding, years of training, and long hours of primping now culminate in the precious minutes of judging. Veteran horse watchers bring their own folding seats, or there are plenty of well-padded benches from which to watch the proceedings. Show jumping demands precise judgments and coordination between horse and rider. It's poetry in motion. Journey now 100 miles south of the English coast to the Channel Isle of Jersey. Martians could feel quite at home at ebb tide, but soon the tidal swell will wash the coast and fill the bays and float the gulls that dwell by Jersey's dramatically rugged shore. Only a stone's throw from the coast of France, rich Norman influences overlay the still very English nature of things, as here in Gorey Harbor. Jersey is a favorite holiday destination for the French, who revel in the naturally perfumed air. A decidedly continental flair seasons both the appearance and the taste of gastronomic delights featuring locally caught seafoods. At the world-renowned Jersey Pottery, truly unique and distinctive wares are crafted in an atmosphere conducive both to highly skilled craftspeople and to visitors as well. Some 200 gently colored products composed of fine English clay and Jersey craftsmanship comprise the line. Subtle and distinctive, Jersey pottery is known throughout the world. On an island only 9 miles by 5 miles, you're never very far from the sea. Sooner or later, Harry, Tom, Dog, and Harry heads for the beaches. Please be careful. The sand is really hot down here. See, I told you it's hot. You can rent some shade down here, or make your own. Boy, he hasn't found a really cool spot to stand yet. Mind you, it's never too hot in England for tea. Elsie Poindexter is one of Jersey's grandest citizens and finest farmers. Her eyes aren't as sharp as they were, and her rheumatism flares up now and then, and at age 92, she's never been off the Isle of Jersey. But I have a feeling the cat has heard all of this before. These old Jersey farmhouses with their cobbled courtyards and fine granite archways are a treasure as rich as their inhabitants. They grow potatoes here on the Poindexter farm, beautiful potatoes. England and Europe's first new potatoes each spring come from Jersey. But what could be tastier or more beautiful to behold than the strawberries that usher in the spring? Special airlifts will spirit these berries to the waiting masses in Britain and on the continent before the day is through. But it is cows that bear the island's name and fame. Scarcely named Bossy, she is Minstrel's dazzling flash. She is Jersey's and the world's champion Jersey cow, shown here by Phil Romerill. Phil is the 12th generation of Romerills to raise Jerseys on this farm since 1753. Bringing in the cows has a rhythm as gentle as the peace and pace of life here in the Isle. Milking times ebb and flow with the days and with the centuries, as surely as the tides that swell along the coasts of Jersey. The royal standard is flying at Windsor. The Queen is in residence. Windsor Castle has dominated the surroundings ever since William the Conqueror started it in the 11th century. Every monarch since has contributed to its development until today. Windsor is the largest inhabited castle in the world. Selected and honored guests scurry to their appointed places. Ladies and gentlemen of the realm covet their invitations to this grandest of royal occasions. Today, the Queen is at Windsor Castle to honor and participate in the procession of the most noble Order of the Garter. Circumstances are right for all the pomp and pageantry that royalty can muster. Preserving and extending a great royal tradition, ceremonies honoring the Order of the Garter have proceeded for the last 635 years. Bedecked in the mantles of their knighthood, knights of the order proceed from the upper ward in stately march to the Royal Chapel of St. George. Prominent among the marchers are Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, the future King of England. In the midst of this noble procession march Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Sovereign, accompanied by His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen. The procession proceeds to the Royal Chapel, here reflected in the bright wear of the Royal Guard. The foundation of the most noble Order of the Garter by King Edward III in 1348 served a double purpose. It brought together in close companionship the sovereign and the outstanding leaders of the country, and it established a new fellowship in religious worship to the honor of Almighty God. To this very day, these annual assemblages serve to perpetuate these cherished traditions. We can debate for hours the relative merits of maintaining such institutions as royalty. Whatever its merits, most will agree that it certainly is the biggest show in town. To my mind, it is not so much a matter whether the Queen is somehow bigger than life. I'm content with the experience that life is a little bigger because of the colorful role so graciously portrayed by Elizabeth, Sovereign Queen of England. In the sprawling flatlands of East Anglia lie the Norfolk Broads. Broads is the English term for a marshy lake. Literally scores of such broads, interconnected by lazy rivers and streams, dominate the Norfolk scene. Boating upon the Broads is an ever-popular holiday pastime for the English and a great treat for the visitor. Charming windmills, the English, by the way, call them wind pumps, have been employed for centuries to drain the surrounding lands for agricultural pursuits. When evening settles in, you may anchor or tie up anywhere within the open reaches of the Broads. Some prefer open water anchorages, while others enjoy the offerings of towns and villages scattered alongside the waterways. The boats form a colorful parade, dipping and swaying in the rhythms of the wind. You can join the evening on deck and contemplate the life of ease. The flags of many nations fly from these craft. A curious duck strains to see what he can see, while a nosy cousin peers into the parlor. Sails catch the last glimmer of light and the last whisper of wind. Soon, like the sun, they too must set. England's heartland is a world of Elizabethan charm, where your biggest worry in life is if the postman's late. We have come to the Cotswolds. William Shakespeare was born here in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1564, spending his childhood here in this charming house. He was schooled alongside the canals and the ever-lilting Avon, drawing inspiration from the comedy and tragedy in the lives of his contemporaries. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre, built in 1932, stands here still upon the Avon bank, drawing its breath from the words of the bard, and its life's blood from the never-ending stream of theater-goers who make their pilgrimages here alongside the river and the memory of the man. Burton-upon-the-Water is my favorite among the Cotswold villages. The tiny Windrush River flows down through a marvelous assemblage of homes, churches, and shops that flank both sides of the stream and are sewn together by the countless footbridges. The Windrush Waters also comprise a playing field for a summer game of water soccer. This is the wet way to do it. It's a great way to get hot and cool off all at the same time. But if you're going to bet on the outcome, always keep a little something in reserve. Bibury is the Cotswold village proclaimed most beautiful by generations of English writers. With its profusion of flowers and lilting stream, it is indeed a place of peace. Arlington Row is Bibury's most picturesque lane. Here, the summer flowers infuse the air with fragrance. A tiny river binding the two halves of Bibury is a playground for the waterfowl. And swans keep an eye out for Judith McCracken, who pops out each day to share a few breadcrumbs as she watches the cygnets grow. Anyone in the neighborhood who needs a friend has one in Judith McCracken. Bibury, here in the Cotswolds, is that kind of place. From the high dale of Coniston, we gaze upon the lake called Coniston Water. Perfect sailing conditions whet our competitive edge here on the windswept surface of Coniston Water. Mind you, the object of this sport is never to get your seat wet. Main highways in the Lake District very quickly and very happily give way to lesser roads, and then to byways. The whole realm is characterized by narrow switchback lanes, by mountains and weathered hills that recede a step at a time as we advance upon them. This was the favorite haunt of famous poets and artists. Their loving words remain, as do the indefinable qualities of peace and timelessness that first attracted them here. To the north lies Bassenthwaite Lake, a world of heathery slopes and slanting light. Armathwaite Manor Hotel is a former manor house converted now to lodgings. The view from here is fit for the lord and the lady of the manor. A Shetland mare escorts her foal along the edge of evening beside the shore of Bassenthwaite. Children from the industrial cities of England are mesmerized by the magic and open splendor of all here in Derwent Water, the queen of the lakes. Here are farms dotted with sheep. The rainbow of a bridge over a clear mountain stream. Valley woodlands and the misty blueness of windswept crags. And streams as clear and clean as sunshine. Here, the mountain slopes are dotted with boulders and with sheep. Sheep herders and their working collies achieve a timeless choreography worthy of dance as they move the sheep down from the high pastures to their summer shearing. Watch these dogs as they work. Once the sheep are penned, Robert Folder and his son proceed to count and sort the ewes and lambs and rams. This annual inventory is the first inkling they have of the increase that nature has provided. When the rowdier dogs are corralled, the familiar task of shearing can commence. Sheep shearing is something the poets who lingered here would understand. It's like the passage of the seasons. The downy snow of winter must pass away with the spring. Then sunshine can grace the soft terrain and nudge it to grow again before the cool winds of autumn shall ripple the lakes and shiver all who would go ill prepared before the wind. The sheep are at first unattentive, but gradually gain interest as the relentless shears move closer and closer to their tail feathers. Careful, mister. That's my tail. Notice how the other sheep are anxiously awaiting their turns. Life in the Lake District is as harsh as a wind-swept moor, as gentle as mist on the waters, and as meaningful as the centuries of accumulated poetry could ever testify. But most particularly for Robert Folder, life in the Lake District is his and his generations to inherit. He asks for nothing more. England's Lake District is a realm of pure poetic beauty. The sun is carrying the day away now, laying it to rest there in the west, promising only that it will bring it all back tomorrow to cast new light among the peaks and along the lakes in this royal realm of England.